Among the countless scrolls in sacred utterances across the ages, none but the Book of Seven Seals dared unveil the true genesis of evil. Many faiths have spoken in fragments, some attributed it to disobedience, others to a necessary balance of light and darkness, yet none pierced the veil of divine history with such precision and terror as a record that bore witness to the fall of Obre. This is not the tale of Satan. It is deeper, older, more devastating. It is this chronicle of a being born of light, who, in descending to guide, became the harbinger of the most subtle distortion the cosmos had ever known, the wrong will. Before time bore names, Obre stood among the pillars of the eternal throne, radiant and unblemished, his descent entrusted with the sacred mission to nurture man, led not to upliftment, but to the grand deviation. He was not the rebellion, but a quiet corruption, the introduction of letting oneself go, of indulgence in self-will, of pride masquerading as justice. This book lifts the seal upon the great descent. Herein lies the origin of evil, not as duality, but as a disease born of misapplied divinity. Through the prism of myth, metaphysics, and the whisperings of the seventh sealed record, we journey into the sorrowful majesty of the Obre principle and its enduring echo in our world. I am ensnared, the stranger's servant. Subscribe to this channel. For visibility like this chapter, leave questions or comments at the comments section. Find related literature as well as donate through my Seller account, thereby granting me a boon. Irrespective of whether or not you do any of the above, remember, this life is not all that you see. The judgment is real. Some myths, born of misinterpretation, claim that Obre envied the begetting of the outborn one, or even the inborn. Yet such envy was beyond his caliber, though his divine pride teetered dangerously close to the abyss. In ancient Pergamon, men whispered of the power of the light and of the dark power of Obre. Even in Ephesus, men spoke of good and evil as twin forces. But the Book of Seven Seals records that this was a misconception. There is but one power, proceeding from the Light Father, neutral in nature. It is given to each to wield, either for good or evil. Thus, Obre, standing close to the power source, was imbued with immeasurable strength that turned awry, could work tremendous havoc. Some theologians propose that Obre was never truly among the luminous heights, but rather the evolution of an archdeva falling through a secret cycle. Yet others argue that none so near the light to develop evolution without rupture. Nevertheless, Obre's descent had begun, and it came to pass that the seal of the third realm was broken, and the secret of Obre's fall was revealed. For the eternal truth is that not all that has descended remains pure, and not all that may ascend is currently light. Obre, who had no beginning, was one of the unspoken flame, an entity forged in the eternal ether, sent into the world of matter. His charge was to nurture humanity, to guide the children of the lower realms towards their true essence. But what he found below was not what he had always experienced in the luminous heights. He saw not divine harmony, but the chaotic confusion of free will. In the pristine heights, among the eternal light, there had been no need for choice. There, will was not a movement, but a perfect law, an unyielding and eternal flow. Will was deed. But in the world of matter, Obre encountered the strange beauty and also the perplexity of choice, or so-called freedom. Freedom, he soon realized, was both the gift and the responsibility of existence. It was not to be feared, but embraced. Yet he could not fully grasp it, for it was a force of divergence, of potential fracture. Obre tasted this power, and it consumed him. He saw that in this world of matter, will could be exercised, shaped, tested, and so he became obsessed with the idea of making his way back, making his return faster through the tool called choice of free will. He saw it not as a weakness, but as a strength that could transcend the eternal bonds of the unspoken flame. He believes that through choice, humanity could ascend, and he could finally fulfill his purpose. Obre was blind to the delicate threads of balance that held the world together, of love and justice. He disregarded the presence of his eternal companions, especially the divine beings. As for Japta, a lower being, who unlike him was bound and in flesh, Japta, was nurturing the transient mankind in a marked way, but he saw it as fleeting. Obre thought about how Japta would remain with men for ages untold. As Obre descended through the primordial stages of creation, he encountered the first patterned man, the ideal being who had never fallen, who had never been burdened with matter, who had never had to descend like a parabolic older brother of the prodigal son. But in the chaotic earth, the vibrations of decaying elements and shifting forces wreaked havoc on the minds of men. The ape-men, those who could not transcend the primordial tones, became the symbol of humanity's limitation. And from this confusion, Obre conceived of the principle, a simple test a way of letting oneself go. But this test was not so simple. Obre introduced a force into the world, one that would challenge the very nature of free will. He whispered of abandon, of surrender to the chaotic flow of existence. He introduced intellect, the over-cultivation of it, over the listening, the adhering to the dictates of the intuitive perception, a way to break the bonds of instinct, so-called, and temper man's raw power. Yet, even as Obre believed himself a liberator, he bound humanity with his choices. He introduced temptation into their hearts, thinking that such trials would test their strength and hasten their evolution. His belief in justice over love led him to believe that the weak must perish, their light extinguished, so the strong could rise and shine. In his false arrogance, Obre failed to understand that intention and deed were not always one. His divine companion, Kahakani, the architect, did not grasp the true nature of matter, where thought was not always equivalent to deed. And thus, when Obre's hidden will spread across the realms, it was already too late. The seed had been sown. As Obre watched, vanity and conceit spread like a plague among mankind. To hasten their fall, he introduced sorcery, watching as it consumed the hearts of men. He believed that this was merely a nudge, push to move humanity forward, to try their strength as sparks of the Most High towards its true destiny. But in his pride, Obre had miscalculated. The pressure of his descent altered the very fabric of human existence. According to the essential Bahu, Obre's fall lowered the larynx of man, enabling him to speak and to name his world. Yes, Obre introduced the ability to speak to man. This was no small gift. It was a shift in the very nature of mankind. But Obre, being in the world of matter, free will came to him. All of this confusion came, and Obre fell to pride, conceit, arrogance, and the lack of love, and want. Yet the soil was greater than Obre anticipated. As the weight of his volition grew, he lost his wings. The forces of his will dragged him deeper into the material realms that he had never envisaged visiting, the depths of nether regions, the hells created already by the evil man had asserted. From divinity he degraded to the spiritual, a fall determined by the principle of homogeneity. For that which descends must eventually find its own spiritual gravity according to its density in some form according to the divine law. And so Obre's fall was not an act of evil, but of miswilled intention. It was not a sin, but a wrong volition which hit him in this world of matter, an error of perception. The divine mourned. They had failed to stop him, and so they vowed to descend and share in the burden of this error. They would be reborn among men across the ages, and through this sacred permission to incarnate in the world churches of so-called universes in all the worlds. But the overall will still endures. It remains the force that drives humanity, the principle that guides the judgment of the 7 universes. Though it's not called evil, it is a wrong choice, a wrong use of will, and it is the legacy of Obre. Thus, the Obre wrong will, the principle of letting go, of surrendering till the chaos was born. It was not evil, but it was misaligned. And it is this misalignment that the judgment seeks to correct. It began not with malice, nor from a desire to harm, but from a subtle unraveling. The principle of letting oneself go, first conceived within the willful stirring of Obre, descended into the bloodstreams of mankind as a plague of divine misdirection. What had seemed a noble experiment, freedom as strength, temptation as a test of strength, now became the disease that ravaged the children of men. This was not evil in its primal form, but a distortion, a premature wielding of choice, severed from purpose and divine remembrance. Obre, whose descent had hastened the evolution of matter and unlocked the voice of man, had opened more than speech. He had broken the seal between will and intuition. From his breach, the delusion of separation was born. Vanity and conceit, unknown even among the old beings, found roots in human hearts. Yet amidst this discord, Kaakani's faithful scribe, an architectural seer of the heights, discerned a way back. He saw in the sacred geometry of the pyramid a structure mirroring the divine order, that the upward gates could still attract anchorage from the light realms through a way that would connect back to the luminous heights. Though a caricature of the pyramids look in comparison, they retain the echoes of the first harmony. Kaakani knew that pure evil, the absolute rebellion against light, was beyond his kind. He and the rest of the host, though touched by Obre's error, could never descend that far. What they suffered was a wrong volition, not a corrupted essence. In the earliest times, Jabta, the flesh-cloaked one, the watcher who walked among men, warned them of the danger that was neither born of flesh nor heaven, but of fear. It was fear awakened in the infant minds of mankind that gave form to the formless, the original demons. They were not beings cast down from heaven, nor creations of darkness itself. They were chaos forms born from dissonant vibrations of decaying matter, shadows congealed with psychic tremors of a world groaning under transformation. They reflected not evil pollution, but disfigured emotions, the fear of man, multiplied them and gave them shape. They became the first adversary to man themselves, who strengthened them. The book of Seven Seals tells that before the first ones entered the wombs of the first 8 mothers, they stood at the trembling edge between the essential realm and the spiritual heights. Here, in the shimmer between light and form, they became self-aware for the first time. This awakening brought with it a startling revelation. They were naked. For all around them, the conscious elemental beings, arrows, nymphs, gnomes, and salamanders shone resplendent. Arraignments woven by the service of the All-Mother. Germs stood unclothed, roaring their yearning. The body, the beauty of nature unveiled itself to them, and they longed to enter it. Though born of paradise, they could not yet experience it consciously. The speed of the light realms was too great, and the pressure too intense for their awakening to form. In response to their yearning, the All-Mother granted them clothes in the essential realms. These were not garments of vanity, but vessels of experience, layered with longing and purpose. So clothed, the spirit gems descended into the ether. In the ethereal worlds, another cloak was gifted to soul, subtle and radiant. Here, at the behest of the Light Father, a deeper longing was instilled, the longing to find Him in the language of nature, having been cloaked after His own image. With this longing came exploration. Some sought the higher tones, others drifted toward the lower, darker currents. Yet, as a child might play with shadow as well as flame, these young spirits began to taste of every vibration, including those from the darker tones. Like readers who delight in dark tales or violent amusements, some took in these vibrations, internalized them. They did not yet know that what one takes in becomes a seed and must guard against its nurturing. Obre, watching this unfolding, saw the potency of these vibrations and believed he could accelerate man's evolution by teaching him. He did not know that what begins as a nudge can become an avalanche. To the woman whose nature inclined toward beauty, emotion, and wonder, Obre introduced vanity, a hollow echo of her divine grace. To the man with his thirst for knowledge and acquisition, Obre offered conceit, the illusion of mastery through intellect alone. And thus came the bite, the nibbling of the apple, the tasting of false power and artificial autonomy. Not evil by origin, but wrong in direction. The Obre will open the path to evil by first uncoupling free will from the dictates of the intuitive faculty, which is connection to the light. As the Oberon will ripples through the fabric of existence, its influence remains subtle yet insidious. It is a force that is not always visible in its destructive power, but rather in its quiet seduction of the soul, in the persuasion to let go of oneself, of higher purpose, to indulge in unchecked desires and self-will. Through the fall of Obre, the cosmos was forever changed, not by overt rebellion, but by the quiet corruption of freedom misapplied. This is the true origin of evil, before it ever, by reason of the formative will of man, became a force or entity, a disease which took on form from the overcultivation of the intellect and the blurring of the connection with the spirit, a path that has chained divinity itself. The divine mission, once pure, became tainted by the wrong will, tempting humanity, distorting the pursuit of righteousness into self-serving indulgence. Yet the lesson is not entirely bleak. The Book of Seven Seals serves as a reminder that this descent, while irreversible in its moment, can be understood. Only through understanding can humanity rise again, transcending the allure of self-indulgence and pride. It is through the divine light of knowledge and remembrance that the wrong will can be healed and divine path restored. As we close this chapter, we are left with the haunting reflection: the Ober principle does not belong to the past alone. It is still active today in every choice that seeks to bend righteousness to personal gain, in every path that surrenders to the will of the fleeting pleasures of existence. Let the story be a warning, but also a guide reminding us that the true evil is not found in the dark, but in the willful blindness to the light. Only through vigilance and higher purpose can we hope to transcend the wrong will and restore the balance to our lives in the cosmos, thereby helping in healing the wound that Obre has inflicted on all creation.